this House will choose Canada as well, Mr. Speaker. I hope they will all choose Canada, parce que nous voulons tous et toutes être maîtres chez nous d'abord, Monsieur le Président.
If you're wondering what just happened to the stream, why it randomly cut out, it's because I live in a communist country that is going bankrupt and we don't have money for anything up here. Sorry that I don't have technology like Americans do, so the podcast format is a little screwed up, because normally you'd have a dual monitor setup where you can monitor the status of the chat, but I have to keep flipping back and forth here between tabs to keep things going to ensure that it's actually running. Sorry our country is bankrupt. So we'll switch back over here and hear what this asshole's talking about.
Together, because we are Canadian. The government launched... The government launched the Strategic Response Fund that my colleagues have been leading, allocating $5 billion to help sectors impacted by tariffs to adapt, to diversify, and to grow. Businesses can use the fund to invest in the design of new products, retool plans to boost productivity, or offset the cost of accessing new markets. Because we want our industry to succeed, we want them to be able to make this pivot, Mr. Speaker. Because we believe in our workers, we believe in our industry, we believe in our future, we believe in Canada. Nous avons également mis en place un programme de liquidité d'1 milliard.
We have also introduced a $1 billion liquidity relief package to help small and medium-sized businesses, because these businesses help our great country grow.
Okay, that is a little bit of the finance minister delivering his speech to explain Budget 2025, which includes billions of dollars in spending, but also an attempt to rein in government spending by cutting 16,000 jobs in the public service this fiscal year. That's 4.5% of the workforce as of March 2025, and going up to a decline of about 40,000, 10%, I guess, from the peak at 2023.
So it sounds like the cuts to the public service sector are not as drastic as I had initially heard, because the news had initially reported that they were expecting or projecting up to 70,000 people. There's only 16,000 jobs cut, but any jobs cut is not telling me how we grow the economy.
Well, we were expecting cuts, and without a doubt, when the minister made the announcement that they're looking to go back to pre-pandemic numbers, when we looked at the juxtaposition, we're talking about 70,000 jobs. So we had an idea that there would be a cut, but I truly believe that these cuts are drastic. I believe that there should have been more work done.
So I'm going to drop a link in the chat here. The link is for my budget that I've been working on since May. It's the only budget that anyone is going to present to you this election cycle that actually makes any legitimate sense. So I'm going to come over here and drop the link in the channel, and keep in mind, as they're explaining to you how they plan to spend our money, this is a hypothetical alternative way that we could spend our money that would actually grow the country, and it would actually provide economic value for people to live here, instead of taking all of their business where the only place they can make money with their business is America.
And how we can build for the future a leaner public service is a more empowered and productive public service. The net size of the workforce by the end of this process, according to the government, by 2028, 2029, will be about 330,000 employees. So a reduction of about 40,000 from peak. You mentioned a 70,000 number. This is 40, so it's not quite all the way. It's a little over half.
Well, there's a problem with just that number, because we did our own polling. And what our polling has shown, that the majority of the Canadians that we polled said, you know, that they would rather see this government focus on making their lives more affordable. And they're concerned about cuts to public services because 64% of them believe that they're already strained.
Right, but the public service did get large, particularly during the pandemic, and the government's point is this is bringing it back to a size that is more manageable, given that taxpayers are paying for the public service.
Without a doubt, but what they want is services right now when they are in a time of need. They truly believe that the services will be impacted by these cuts. And I have to say, I agree with them. And my only concern is we have a lot of challenges coming our way. And when we're talking about transformation and this innovation that they want Canada to be in, it's great, but it's federal public sector workers who actually do that work. And so when we're talking about streamlining, we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about transformative public services, this is great. But every department and agency actually connects with each other. And so right now, with the blanketed announcements, there needs to be more work done, because when you cut one arm, guess what? It doesn't mean that work automatically transfers to another
One more
area.
thought from David.
No, but in talking to officials inside the budget briefing, the lockup as we call it, that they held for journalists today, there was a concession that there's been a problem with execution on a lot of the infrastructure programs and other things that they wanted to do, that the public service, as large as it got, wasn't delivering on the execution of some of these programs. And I guess their view is that at least
America, if you're an American citizen who's watching this video right now, I hope you're paying attention, because you won. Why is that important? Because Canadian citizens are still debating over whether or not we're going to have an election, where I've been preparing for it, at least mentally, for a week. Because I don't see this budget as possibly being able to be passed. A budget that cuts 16,000 jobs versus the budget I'm proposing that'll bring 50,000 construction jobs into the province, if not more, through the help of Elon's Boring Company. And we will develop a new industry of infrastructure and technology in this province. And it will help to grow the entire country. And I do think that it will work. But Canada, I have an idea. You're not listening.
The bodies there. And these cuts, to me, could be seen as performative, because if the services aren't being delivered and you don't have the bodies there, then what's next?
Okay. Sharon D'Souza, National President of the Public Service
hello,
Alliance.
two people
I'm sure
watching.
we'll speak again. Thank you
So
for your
if you're
initial.
just joining the chat, the Canadian government is about to present its budget and all of the items that they plan to invest in. My question that I am trying to address in this video is the investment going to grow the economy? Or is the investment just a restructuring of what we already have internally circulating? Unless anything in the budget can resolve this diagram that I've outlined in previous videos extensively, the budget needs to fail or the country will go bankrupt.
Chrystia Freeland had in her fall economic statement of December 16th, 2024, which got overshadowed by something else she wrote that day, being her resignation letter. But there is some expansion on that, and this is on the tax side. And Peter Armstrong will be here to get really deep into this later. But they are giving immediate expensing for manufacturing and processing buildings. So essentially, if you're getting into the critical minerals game, if you're getting into the extraction game and you need to build a building for processing, or if you need to retool, say, a car operation into a different type of operation, there's a tax incentive there.
So they're talking about manufacturing and processing buildings and also about mineral redistribution. You want to know what would bring more mineral wealth into the province of Alberta? Is if you followed these blueprints and built a mega city across the province of Alberta using Elon Musk's Boring Company, because you would be tunneling through mountainous terrain. All of these mountains are rich in minerals and resources, which would mean that Elon Musk and his Boring Company could negotiate trade deals and trade terms on behalf of America to get some profit from Canadian minerals. And Canada will get to decide how much are we going to let Americans profit from our minerals. But because we're not mining them, Elon is. He's the one that invented this technology, not Canada, because Canadians don't innovate anything anymore.
For manufacturing and processing to 0.4%. It's 12% in the United States. This is a competitive advantage they're hoping to get for the hard-hit manufacturing sector, where we've lost 30,000 jobs as a country, as an incentive to keep operations in Canada and maybe expand in some of the Canadian-only opportunities.
Okay, let's dip back in, if we can, to the House of Commons, where the Finance Minister is delivering his speech on Budget 2025, and we'll come back and speak more with David.
And I know although the Conservative are silent in their heart, they support that, Mr. Speaker, because I know that they will take the break week to go around and tell their constituent how great we're going to see this country and all the investment we're going to see.
Again, investment. They keep using that word. Is the investment going to grow the economy or redistribute who has wealth within the country?
Going to make it even better. This fiscal
now he's talking in French. So, welcome to Canadian politics. It's an absolute bloody shit show. America, you think your politics are nuts? Up here in Canada, we treat this like child's play. We're children up here in the House of Commons. So he's presenting the budget, talking about investments, because nobody in the country understands math, and nobody in the country understands what is an investment. If you went to an investor and asked for $660 million worth of funding for diversity programs, you better have the best damn idea on how that money turns into a $1 billion revenue stream. Canadian politicians and Canadian citizens seem to think this is a bidding war for who has the best socialist program. Not how to grow the economy, not how to make money, not how to do business and entrepreneurship. That's why the business and entrepreneurs are leaving. And if you ever in your life read the book Atlas Shrugged, it would be obvious and it would make sense to you. Because I read that book, and as soon as this started happening to my country, I was like, holy shit, this is like a fictional story come true.
We must spend
Okay,
less
we are
on
going to leave the finance minister as he continues his speech there inside the House of Commons. The Green Party leader, Elizabeth May, has already come out of the House to, of course, she represents one vote. One vote would matter if you're seeking for just 3 votes to get this budget passed, but she has already declared where she stands on the budget. Take a listen.
Right now, would you vote no on the budget?
Absolutely. There's no way that we can, as Greens, vote yes on this budget. But I want to emphasize there are several days in which this budget can be negotiated and amended before it goes to a vote. And that's something that doesn't get discussed much. I am surprised that Mr. Carney has not reached out, or that more of his ministers haven't reached out to say, what would it take to get Greens to vote for this budget? In the same way I hear from friends in the New Democratic Party, they haven't felt that there's been an effort to get us on side early on. So we are now in a position where I think every vote's going to matter, every vote's going to count, and I would invite the Prime Minister, and I've sent this message through the officials who were with us in the lockup, please let them know I'd like to talk, because there's some things that could be done that would make it possible for us to vote for this budget.
Okay, so Elizabeth May, Green Party leader, of course the only Green seat inside this iteration of the House of Commons, saying that as things stand now, she cannot support this budget, but says she's willing to talk.
She's willing to talk. She's willing to talk. So here's why it matters. Americans, if you're joining, this is the Canadian political system. If you're wondering who that woman is who is just on the screen, her name is Elizabeth May, and she has a party in Canada called the Green Party, and the party is an entirely complete joke. She is the only person that wins the seat. The party is a party of one person. The party is her. And she seems to want to achieve all these Paris Climate Accords, and this is what her policy platform is, whereas all the rest of the country is debating over the economy. Elizabeth May just stated on TV that she would vote no on Carney's policy. My question is, to the Green Party of Canada, would they support the budget of the Disney Party if we built an infrastructure transportation system within the province of Alberta that would do, what would it do? It would reduce the commute time around the province from 18 hours and 30 minutes down to 3 hours and 5 minutes on a round trip around the province. Elizabeth May, are you listening? Do you want an idea that would work? If you support the Disney Party of Canada and our budget proposal, then we will build a transportation system that will be the next generation of transportation worldwide. It will get Canadians and Albertans specifically access to the areas that we need within our province and it will get Elizabeth May her climate policies that she can take to the Paris Climate Accords and say, look what we did up here in Canada. We didn't just meet your expectations, we greatly exceeded them. Because if we were to do this in every province in the country over time, then we would have the best transportation system on planet Earth, and we would reduce the amount of travel time and distances between locations and the fuel that you have to burn to get there. Elizabeth May, are you going to support the Disney party's budget, or are you going to tell me that you have no ideas? Canada, I have an idea, but nobody is listening. Not one person is listening.
Yes, methane regulations and the deployment at scale of technologies such as carbon capture and storage will create the circumstances whereby the oil and gas emissions cap would no longer be required. So the Pathways Carbon Capture
Alliance,
Project is a big thing, and people like Daniel Smith and Scott Moe and Tony Wakeham, the new Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, the three main oil-producing provinces, agreeing to an industrial carbon price with a 2050 horizon to get to net zero. That can make the oil and gas emissions cap go away.
Yeah.
You'd still pay for your pollution in that sector, but you don't have to hit a certain emissions thing. And this goes back to what the Prime Minister's been saying. I'm interested in results, not necessarily specific policy instruments. And I think this has been part of the overtures to Daniel Smith in the private conversations that has her more positive lately.
So Liz May not in favor of what she sees there when it comes to the environment, but frankly, the government may not need the Green Party leader and may not want to negotiate on that strategy, given some of its other plans in terms of investment and indeed the things that it wants to put in place for infrastructure spending, which we will talk about with David in just a moment. But first, I want to bring in Sahir Khan of the Institute of Fiscal Studies and Democracy, who was also inside the lockup, and he joins me now. Nice to see you.
Same here.
Give me your overall impressions, Sahir Khan, of what you take from this budget. Is it indeed, as the government wants us to believe, a budget?
Okay, so you want to know the significance of why this matters? Okay. Why am I doing these videos in the first place? Well, I'm sitting here doing a live stream on YouTube. All of the stuff that is required to make a legitimate political change in the country happen is happening behind the scenes, because I'm getting text messages from people that are starting to watch my video and they're starting to approve of the ideas that I have. And I just got a question from someone who asked me, they said, any plans to include Cypress Hills into the Hyperloop? I'm not entirely sure what or where Cypress Hills is. And so this is the beauty of what it is doing a budget like this. Because I am doing the budget the way that I am, digitally on social media, I can easily modify and change it as I need. So we'll come over here and we'll say Cypress Hills, Alberta, because I didn't know about this place. I said I knew this area like the back of my hand, but there are even places in Alberta that I haven't been before. So we'll come over to Cypress Hills and we'll see, and if I zoom out here on the map, we'll turn off the satellite data. We'll go back to default view and we'll lower the budget there. So if this is Cypress Hills down here, and the transit system that I am proposing connects Fort Macleod to Lethbridge, what does that mean? If you wanted to service a ski resort out in Cypress Hills from this terminal station at the US-Canada border terminal would then have, guess what it would have? It would have, let me put this up here, 15, go over here, an extension line out to the east built at some point to connect to Medicine Hat and the Cypress Hills ski resort. That would be a later infrastructure project, because you can't build everything literally at once. You have to start and plan out from there. But if that is what a Canadian citizen would require in order to vote on and support a budget like this, then we make that promise. And it is a promise that can be fulfilled on and delivered into the future at some point. So maybe we won't do an extension line from Lethbridge out to Medicine Hat. We'll do one to Cypress Hills first, and then from Cypress Hills to Medicine Hat. That'll force people from Medicine Hat who want to get to Lethbridge to travel through Cypress Hills first. Why is that important? Because it'll drive more traffic and economy and business into Cypress Hills, which is probably otherwise a small little hamlet town that services 400 people. So we'll go back to the budget and see what they're talking about now.
And so, you know, the Treasury, the powders, the dry powder has kind of been spent. So this is going to have to work, and the hard work probably just begins now, which will be execution.
Yeah, the how, I agree, because that's that's the part that I'm never quite clear on how it's all going to happen. The spending review and the number of the amount of money they're saving, they're hoping to save $60 billion in savings over 5 years, largely coming from getting rid of public sector workers. Was that bigger than you thought? Do you think it's adequate? What did you make of that?
I think it was smaller than I thought. I suspect the government probably started with a deficit target in mind and kind of worked backwards and decided, you know, what's the minimum number they have to take out of the public service payroll to make these numbers work. If we combine the natural attrition numbers with maybe some of the packages that get offered and some of the reductions they've already had, I don't think 40,000 is a really insurmountable number. And I think it probably can be done, as the minister says, with some compassion. I think it's the tip of the iceberg. I'm really hoping to see this government do reviews at an ongoing.
Compared to, oh my God, that should be terrifying me. Holy shit. Remember when I said Canadians don't do math? They're allergic to math? I'm looking at a number on my screen right now that is absolutely terrifying because my brain can compute 2 and 2 and put 2 and 2 together and figure out what that means. It says here on the screen, if we go back to the news channel, in the lower Chiron, federal government projects a deficit of $78.3 billion compared to $42 billion in 2024 fall update. If that number isn't absolutely terrifying you, it's because you're allergic to math. In the course of 12 months, our federal deficit has doubled. In the course of 12 months, the federal deficit for the country of Canada has doubled. And Canadians will sit here and watch a news story like this, and then they'll go make breakfast, and then they'll yell and fight with each other over jobs and employment and money, money, money. If you want money, you need to be terrified by the fact that you can't do math. And the number on the screen has doubled. That's bloody well terrifying. But I can't go too crazy. I can't get too worried or worked up because then I'm liable to be incarcerated up in the hospital for being a crazy person. So if I'm going to be locked up and abused and treated like a criminal for trying to point out economic principles, facts, and money, and mathematics is landing me in prison, then I am hereby seeking asylum in America because I am not legally allowed to work or make money in my own country.
Not like this is going to be a very quick response and a quick remedy. This is going to unfold over years and years, and the real test will be, can we maintain a budgetary discipline and a political discipline to make sure that we have an operating budget surplus and we're only borrowing for capital. I think it's a really good strategy for any government to employ. But it's another thing for governments to stick to that and maintain that discipline over years, because that's really what it takes if you're going to do a pivot. I said it wasn't generational, but.
Okay, so the government has announced $1 billion worth of funding liquidity relief for small business. My question is, who is the business serving? Is the business serving local customers, or is the business convincing Americans to vacation in our country? Because if I go back to the thesis that I outlined in May, if you restructure the internally circulating system of currency, how do you keep the country from collapsing? If that $1 billion investment in liquidity relief for small businesses, now this is a feel-good measure. Canadians will get on board and support this because you're supporting the smaller businesses. But if these small businesses are only redistributing the stuff we don't have, that's being exponentially extracted out, the country will go bankrupt. We need that $1 billion of investment for Canadian small businesses to go into Elon Musk's infrastructure project in Alberta first. Because the moment we have the transportation system and the lines built to the structure of our province, the other small businesses can grow. If small businesses are only serving local customers, then this equation is not resolved. It is not.
Et dans toutes les associations, même ces gens-là qui représentent les discriminations-là n'ont pas de bon sens. Le gouvernement se permet un déficit de 78 milliards et ne prend pas la peine de régler une injustice.
Deficit, but it's not going to resolve this injustice. And basically, it's trying to turn its back on some aspects of Trudeau's legacy, but it's still the same government. Now, the annual increase in health transfers must be able to cover the expenses that have to be covered by Quebec. And there again, we see a refusal by this government. So year after year, the Quebec government will continue to be unable to make the payment associated with increased costs for the healthcare system in Quebec, and that applies elsewhere as well. In terms of infrastructure, $75 billion, only $9 billion is actually new money. $9 billion over 5 years. What exactly do you expect to do with that when the needs are so huge?
Okay, that's Yves-François Blanchet, the leader of the Bloc Québécois. The reason we're dipping into all of these reactions, of course, is because this is a minority government, and the government's going to need at least 3 votes or 3 people who get the flu when that vote comes in a couple weeks' time. Certainly sounds like from the beginning of what Yves-François Blanchet is saying there is that the government didn't meet the 6 non-negotiable demands that the Bloc had put forward. We will wait to see whether he gives a definitive answer.
Did you hear that, Canada? Did you hear that? The government of Canada did not meet the 6 non-negotiable terms on part of the Bloc Québécois. So here's where we sit. Elizabeth May and her 1 vote is not going to support the party of the Liberals. The NDP is questionable because they don't seem to have any moral integrity. They are the Labour Party, and they should not be supporting a budget that cuts 16,000 job losses, but the budget is going to present that
People
loss.
have some things to look at and consider. Let's bring in CBC's Peter Armstrong, senior business correspondent. Sorry to keep you waiting. There's lots going on.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. Give me your take on what this does to the business environment and sort of the fiscal picture of the country right now.
I think there's a couple of things.
Yeah,
The
I
environment
know.
that it comes from is still very
I'm gonna
perilous.
do
and there's
another
not
20
a ton
minutes of
in
live
this
stream and then go have
that
a shower.
addresses what happens if things get worse and not better. This offers a plan to how to get out of the mess we're in into a better place. That plan comes with a high degree of difficulty, and pulling it off is going to take both time and execution, neither of which we have in abundance. We don't have a ton of time, and we don't have a long history of governments, recently anyways, implementing some of these big, bold, ambitious plans that they've had. And so, you look at some of their...
Okay, so as of right now, they've announced that the federal budget is going to cause 16,000 jobs to be cut. The point that I was making is that the NDP should not support that because they're the Labour Party. The Bloc Québécois is not going to support the budget because it failed to meet on 6 of the non-negotiable demands. If you want to talk about non-negotiable demands, then I will present to you what my non-negotiable demands are. Number 1, this is non-negotiable in the budget for the Disney party. There must be $40 million allocated to bolstering food banks. You cannot expect business to grow if people are hungry, and so we will start by bolstering the food banks first. $3 billion will be allocated for a 10-year project in World Disaster Relief and Training School. Now, that's a monumental project that requires an entire hour-long video on its own to explain. This is non-negotiable. $60 million is going to build an Indigenous chief longhouse in the province of Alberta. Another $40 million is non-negotiable. The Ski Louise staff building will be rebuilt, and or from the pictures I saw last night, it may already be rebuilt. It will be reimbursed. This is a handout. If you want to negotiate with America, you need to understand how Americans think. And Americans don't like handouts. Therefore, Canadians only do like handouts. I've included in the budget a box for handout. How much of what is on this list I'm asking for is considered a handout. And so long as it's less than 5%, I think that's acceptable. Why? Because I can take the other 95% of that's profit and say, hey, America, here's a profitable business model. And then Canadians get to ask, how greedy is America? Are you so monumentally greedy that you would turn down a business proposal that has 5% handouts, God forbid? Because that's what Canadians want. That's how we think. Or would the Canadians turn it down because, God forbid, we do anything with an American corporation and their money? $200 million non-negotiable will build Disney their ski resort. $165 million non-negotiable will refund every last victim of the Lake Louise fire in 2023 who was not properly compensated for. Nikiska Ski Resort will receive $10 million of funding to build their infrastructure. Banff Sunshine Village will receive $20 million of funding to build their infrastructure. Norquay will receive $5 million of funding to build their infrastructure. Golden will receive $1 million to build their infrastructure, and Panorama will receive $15 million to build theirs. The reason all the ski resorts in the area have to, and this is non-negotiable, be included in the budget is because they will go under if you put a Disneyland nearby and don't boost them too. But if the Disneyland does this ethically and the business is conducted ethically, then it will mean all these other businesses have massive revenue streams too, because Canada will be able to offer to the world a location, a Disneyland location, where there's like 16 other ski resorts nearby as well that you can visit on your vacation.
And if it works, but as I say, high degree of difficulty, low margin of error.
It buys time.
Which is really important.
That's the key thing.
100%.
It's buying time to get to the midterm elections, to build a foundation from which you can do an economic pivot, open up the trade corridors, get the major project offices going. But it's all got to work in succession. And I got to say, Don Farrell, Rosie, at the major projects office out in Calgary, no pressure, but there's pressure because these are the projects that can really move the needle on GDP because of what's happening in the key sectoral areas. That needs to deliver, that needs to work, or it's a key pillar of this plan.
And David, if I may, the importance of getting these early projects done isn't just about saying these are the kinds of projects we're doing. This is messaging to the rest of the world and to the rest of Canadian industry.
The kind of projects we're doing. Do their budget include projects that bring outside money in? Because if the projects they propose building are only going to internally circulate the money we already have, then the equation is not resolved. I am telling you, Canadians, the budget of the Disney party is the only budget in this country that is not only balanced, but it resolves this problem that is going to lead to our bankruptcy in the future if we don't pay attention to it now. I'm not saying we're there yet. I'm not saying everyone needs to run around like chickens with their heads cut off. I'm saying you need to pay attention and listen to what I'm telling you, God forbid, lest I get a single view on a single piece of content that I make, God forbid. You need to listen to what I'm telling you, because what I'm telling you is right. Mathematically, I'm not telling you I'm morally better than you or whatever, that all these ridiculous arguments that caused fights back in May that led me to ending up incarcerated in the hospital. Incarcerated for the crime of proposing business deals with America. Therefore, I believe that I need asylum in America if this doesn't work. If Canada doesn't get a Disneyland park and a new transportation system, then I'll take my ideas and my methodology down to Elon Musk and the Boring Company, and we'll build America, God forbid.
After that, and it's going to go to provincial and territorial governments and through them to municipalities to just support a whole range of infrastructure and local community projects. But a lot of this comes with a catch because it breaks down into a couple of streams. There's a provincial and territorial stream. It'll support housing enabling infrastructure, roads, water, wastewater, health-related infrastructure, houses, and infrastructure of colleges and university. And to access funds, provinces and territories must agree to cost match the federal funding, so it's not free money, premiers, and to substantially reduce development charges and not levy other taxes that hinder the housing supply. So it's a bit like the housing accelerator, but it exists as a baseline annual infrastructure fund. That to tap into this, you need to get the money, you have to agree.
So I noticed he was talking about roads. The reason that's important, the reason that's important is because here in Alberta, we have a saying, there's two seasons, construction and winter. When the winter happens, the construction stops. But because of new construction techniques and innovation, they continue to do infrastructure developments on the roads, even in the winter.
Because you're spending $25 billion to try to boost the housing supply, curbing immigration substantially to reduce the pressure on the housing supply. You can't have the lower orders of government who have been calling for money and federal action, then gumming it up with detrimental action or inaction and a lack of cash. Now, there is a bit of a carve-out for this. There's $5 billion over 3 years for health infrastructure. This is hospitals, emergency rooms, urgent care centers, medical schools. You don't have the tick any boxes on development charges to get that. You need to build out an emergency room.
But do you have to match with that promise as well, or you don't?
It says recognizing the critical need to strengthen health infrastructure, the requirement related to development charges and other taxes noted above will not apply to this fund.
Okay.
So yes, you have to match, but you don't have to commit to not raise development fees and these sorts of things. So there's a blend of it, but you can see this all adds up to about $280 billion in infrastructure and capital investment that they're putting in here. Like there's $80 billion for defense, $30 billion of it is capital. Some of that's going to be dual purpose in the north. Roads, for example, to get to a military base could also be part of the passageway to a mining site or to a critical mineral facility. They're hoping all of this unlocks a bunch of domestic capital. $1 trillion is the number they set on it. The business experts we talked to.
Okay, so here in the budget, they're talking about an $80 billion investment in the defense spending. I'm telling you right now, if you build a Disneyland, it would work. You want to know why? We'll go back to my budget, the budget that I've been working on for 6 months, and nobody was listening to me back then. Cruise lines, Halifax East and Cruise Line Halifax West. From my $10 billion, now notice I'm doing conservative numbers. Let's say we wanted to put a full $80 billion into this project, and I did that. Then what that would mean is I could multiply this number by math, 8. So we can take this number over here and invest $8 billion into a cruise line out in the east and $8 billion into the cruise line in the west, because they probably cost significantly more than just $1 billion each, and it would get ports. Development in the ports to support cruise lines would also be simultaneously developing the ports that can be used for the military. Canada can build out our ports on the east and west at the same time because they'll be using Disney money to build the infrastructure. Disney will supply the money for the infrastructure because what do? They get 2 new cruise lines. Canada Cruise Line Vancouver and Cruise Line Halifax.
In the briefing, Randall.
You can see this budget as nothing here that the opposition can support, and you can easily read this budget as nothing in here that the opposition can support.
Andrew, you're in the lockup too. What do you take away from it?
A little different. I mean, after all the hype about transformational this and generational that, what you got is a pretty conventional Liberal budget. There's oceans of new spending in this here. They're actually going to spend more than the Trudeau government at its height. They're going to borrow more than the Trudeau government at its height. The deficits are going to be twice as large as in the last Trudeau budget. It's true that they're going to call a lot of it capital spending, which we used to just call spending. Okay, fine. Maybe some of that's useful and good. It's on the, they were going to spend less to invest more. It's on the spend less side that they really fall down. That comprehensive expenditure review that was so ballyhooed before the event, in the end came in at 3 years from now, they'll spend $13 billion less than they otherwise would on a budget of $500 billion. So 2.5% cuts in spending. That is not transformational. That is not a shift in spending. That's just a lot of new spending with some cuts to make room for it. The really disappointing thing is on the growth side. We're facing a growth crisis. We were even before Donald Trump came along. There's very little.
So I put this number in the notes that I'm compiling here, total budget of $500 billion. That number is important because it gives me an idea of how much money Canada has to invest, which is remarkable that I've put together a budget here for $10 billion that would actually do something worthwhile, and they're going to tell you how they're going to spend $500 billion and produce nothing and drive no economic value into the country.
Yeah, well, first I want to go back to Andrew's point about the hype. I don't think that I can think back to a budget that was so overhyped ahead of time as this budget. And the reality is, maybe it's from rookies in the PMO, failure at comms, but the way to do it usually is you underpromise and you overdeliver. This budget was overpromised and underdelivered in many ways. And you're kind of stuck with a gap between the rhetoric of the government about how transformational it is and the reality. And talking about the cuts in spending, I'm not saying you should take a hatchet to jobs, but if that small percentage is if you get to it. And there's no guarantee that it's going to work. As for the politics of it, it is not the budget of a government that is looking to the NDP or the Bloc Québécois or the Green Party to support. There is nothing in there that will make it easier for the NDP to justify that it will support the budget. The cuts to the public service are real enough for the NDP to struggle its way to saying no. And it may be easier for the Conservatives to support.
So here's some math and numbers. If you were to take this $500 billion and invest just 20% of that, that would be $100 billion. That would mean that everything that I've listed in this budget here, if you went from $10 billion to $100 billion and you allocated that specifically for this project, then everything in here goes up by 10, which means this is not, because it probably not realistically you probably could not realistically do this for 1 billion, but for 10 billion you could. So then this becomes 10 billion, this becomes 10 billion, this instead of 30 million becomes 300 million, and then down here we do other things. We add more stuff to the budget, we expand it out. But if we were to take, just 20% of that 500 billion and then put it up here, then that would mean that all of this other stuff can be improved upon and increased. Because I was looking into this infrastructure cost and doing some preliminary research into the underground system that Elon has, and $5 million is probably not enough to build that underground terminal station that I'm describing. But a 10 times increase would mean this is 50 million and this is 500 million. The customs office in Lethbridge would be a $500 million project. The Hyperloop underground terminal station in St. Albert, Alberta would be a $50 million underground terminal station, not 5. And that would actually be able to fund it, because 5 million is probably too little, because that's how little money Canada has to invest. But now I found out from the budget that we actually do have $500 billion to play with. If we have $500 billion to play with, we should spend 20% of that on my proposals.
The votes. But if not, some people are going to have to swallow a heavy pill if they don't want to have an election.
30 seconds to you, Andrew, and then Chantal.
The budget removes some of the irritants that are causing some voters to bleed to the Conservatives from the Liberals, but the NDP is not going to provoke an election. They will find a way to not vote on this. They may not vote for it, but they cannot afford an election at this point.
Chantal, 30 seconds to you.
Okay, so Mark Carney's problem is going to be, if Andrew is right, and he may well be, that he will be facing 3+1 opposition parties that are basically saying they don't support the budget, even if they don't walk the talk of not supporting the budget. But that does have consequences going forward. Right. Because the government, if it wants to implement those plans, will need allies. And so it will be flying. And I agree with Althea. I'm not sure that it would be a very exciting platform to run on if you were a Liberal.
Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, Althea Raj, we will see you all
later. A very
later.
exciting platform to run on. Would Canadian citizens be more excited about Disney?
Final thought?
Well, it's interesting. The cuts may be too big for the New Democrats to support on a budget vote, especially if you're Heather McPherson and you're seeking the leadership. Getting that caucus to do something in a united way on a budget like this is going to be difficult to pull off. The Conservatives, the deficit is probably too high for them to vote for it. So Chris D'Entremont and friends on line 1, 2, and 3. I spoke to Chris D'Entremont the other night, and he made it clear to me. He said, people in Atlantic Canada, certainly in Nova Scotia, where he is from, and it's D'Entremont, by the way, we're going to need to say that name a lot in the next couple of days. They don't want an election. He doesn't want an election. He was deciding whether or not he's going to vote for the budget. He said he would make a decision by Thursday. He is not in his chair in the House of Commons right now, and neither is Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. The Politico article has put the cat amongst the pigeons on Parliament Hill, I would suspect, so we could get some clarity on that pretty soon.
All right, David will be back in just mere moments with a special edition of Power and Politics where he will speak with the finance minister. I will be back on The National a little bit later with a special at issue and also an interview with the finance minister. You're going to see a lot of him everywhere in the next couple of days. He is the man of the hour, as it were, but more analysis and coverage of budget, federal budget 2025 continues on Power and Politics with David Cochrane up next. I'm Rosemary Barton on behalf of myself and the whole team here. Hope that helped you understand. We'll keep digging into the details to bring you more coverage.
So there you have it. The budget has now been presented to Canada. We have $500 billion to play with, which gives me a better idea of how to go about planning out my own ideas and thoughts on this. This is something I've been thinking about and planning since May because I'm the only one that has been paying attention to it while the entire country collapses. So I'm going to be stopping the live stream now because I need to go and get ready to go into the city. Again, the hour-long commute that I'm describing for, guess what, a business course that I'm currently enrolled in, so that I can learn, all the fundamentals about how to run a business inside of the interior of a country where it's not profitable to run a business, as I've outlined in my previous videos. It's not mathematically possible to make income and actually return on your investment. So thank you for watching the video. Please consider my proposals. Please consider the budget that I have linked below, my hypothetical budget that could exist if Canadians got on board. But it will require one and only one exception, and it's not negotiable. You need to do business with an American company because they have technology and innovation that has solved our problem. Our engineering problems can be solved by Elon Musk's Boring Company. So thank you for hearing that and considering my opinion, and I'll keep these live streams going to explain more of the fundamentals behind my thesis and why the budget makes sense.